Ethan had always felt like something was missing. He couldn't explain it and he couldn't quite name it. But every morning when he opened his eyes and every night before he fell asleep, a small voice inside him would whisper, "You're meant for more." It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was always there. And the longer he ignored it, the heavier it became. He tried to silence it with distractions, scrolling on his phone, endless television, busy work. But the whisper was patient. It waited until one quiet evening after a long day, Ethan sat by his bedroom window, staring at the night sky. The stars looked peaceful, but inside he felt restless. That's when the voice returned again, gentler this time, but clearer than ever. "You're meant for more." He closed his eyes, breathed deeply, and finally, instead of pushing it away, he listened. He didn't know what more meant. He didn't have a plan or a path. But for the first time in a long time, he gave that inner voice space to speak. And what it said was simple: begin. That whisper was the start of everything. You see, change doesn't always begin with a loud crash or a big moment. Sometimes it begins with something quiet, a feeling, a thought, a question. Sometimes it begins in the stillness when no one is watching and the world is fast asleep. But make no mistake, the moment you listen to that inner voice, your life begins to shift. That's what happened to Ethan, because the next morning he woke up with one decision. He would no longer ignore that voice, and that one decision changed everything. But as soon as he chose to listen, fear showed up. It always does. Fear told him he was foolish for thinking he could change. Fear reminded him of everything he'd failed at before. Fear whispered back louder than his dream. It said, "You're not enough. You're too late. You'll never make it." And for a moment, Ethan almost believed it. But something stronger had taken root inside him: courage. And courage doesn't mean the fear goes away. It means you move anyway. So Ethan took his first small step. He made a list of things he wanted to try, just ideas, nothing big. Then he took another step. He began waking up 30 minutes earlier to read, to think, to breathe. It wasn't perfect. Some mornings he overslept. Some days he doubted himself. But he kept going because he realized something important. Fear keeps dreams hidden, but courage brings them to life. And it doesn't take loud bravery. Sometimes courage is quiet. Sometimes it looks like trying again after failing. Sometimes it's simply not giving up. Ethan wasn't trying to change the world. He was just trying to change his world. And every time he stood up to fear, he grew a little stronger. People around him didn't notice at first, but he did. And that was enough. Because when you start listening to your own heart, and when you stop letting fear drive your life, something incredible happens. You begin to wake up, you begin to rise, and little by little, you begin to change everything. Ethan quickly discovered something powerful. Big dreams don't require big actions at first. They need small steps repeated daily. That's how his journey truly began, not with a loud announcement, not with a massive change, but with quiet, consistent action. Every morning, Ethan did one thing that brought him closer to the life he wanted. Some days it was reading for just 10 minutes. Other days it was writing down 3 things he was grateful for. Sometimes it was simply sitting still and imagining what was possible. To the world, these actions looked small, almost invisible, but inside Ethan, something was shifting. Every small step he took became a message to himself: I am moving forward. He didn't always feel motivated. There were mornings when the bed felt too comfortable and doubt felt too loud, but Ethan understood now he didn't have to wait for motivation. He just had to move. Because momentum builds motivation. One small action created energy, that energy created belief, and belief created transformation. Day by day, Ethan's routine started to change. He replaced habits that drained him with habits that lifted him. He stopped comparing his journey to others and started honoring his own pace. He began to trust that small efforts done consistently would lead somewhere beautiful. And they did. But then came the test. One rainy afternoon, Ethan received a message from a friend he hadn't seen in years. The friend asked, "What are you doing with your life now?" Ethan paused. He could feel the old fear rising, that voice saying, "You're still not doing enough. You're still not successful." But this time, Ethan didn't listen. He smiled and simply replied, "I'm becoming who I was meant to be, one step at a time." That moment reminded him of something important. Life doesn't ask for perfect timing. It asks for your presence. It asks for your commitment, and it rewards your effort, not instantly, but always. So Ethan kept going. Some days were full of progress. Others felt like setbacks. But he understood now, progress isn't always measured by speed. It's measured by direction. And as long as he was moving forward, even slowly, he was winning. He didn't need a crowd cheering him on. He didn't need the world to notice, because real change happens in silence, in early mornings, in quiet decisions, in the moments no one sees. And then one day, everything begins to look different. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Ethan's life didn't transform overnight, but because of his daily steps, everything began to shift. His thoughts were clearer, his heart felt lighter, and his confidence grew. Because every small action he took was a vote for the person he wanted to become. And that person, he was becoming him. Day by day, step by step, with courage, with heart, with unstoppable quiet strength. Ethan had come a long way. He didn't always feel it, but something deep inside had changed. He no longer woke up with that heavy feeling of doubt. Instead, there was a quiet fire in his chest, a sense of purpose he had never felt before. But growth isn't a straight road, and life will always test how badly you want to move forward. One morning, Ethan received a rejection letter. He had applied for a position that he truly believed in, a role that felt like the next big step in his journey. He had imagined getting it. He had pictured the celebration, but it didn't happen. And for a few moments, the doubt came back. That old voice whispered again, "See, you're not good enough. Why'd you even try?" He sat there with the letter in his hand, staring at the words. And then something shifted. Ethan took a deep breath, placed the letter down, and softly said to himself, "This is not the..." Because now he knew how to talk back to fear. He had practiced, he had trained for this, not in a gym, but in the small choices he made every single day to keep going when it was easier to quit. So instead of sinking, Ethan stood. Instead of giving up, he grew up. He asked himself, "What can I learn from this?" And the answer came slowly. He realized the rejection wasn't failure, it was feedback. It wasn't the end of the path. It was a signpost pointing him to a better one. Ethan started to see obstacles differently. They weren't roadblocks anymore. They were training grounds. They were there to build his patience, his resilience, and his faith. So he adjusted his plan. He refined his skills. He tried again. And this time, he didn't just apply. He reached out. He learned more. He asked for advice, and he improved. And while he waited, he worked. Because Ethan had learned another powerful truth. You don't have to control the outcome. You only need to control your effort. And that mindset changed everything. Weeks later, he received another email. This time, it wasn't a rejection. It was an invitation. A new opportunity. Different from the one he expected, but better in many ways. He smiled, not because of the success, but because of the journey. He was proud not just of where he was going, but of who he was becoming. You see, life doesn't always go the way we plan, but if you stay open, if you stay consistent, if you trust the process, it will take you exactly where you're meant to be. Ethan didn't become fearless, he became stronger than his fear. He didn't stop falling. He just learned how to rise faster, wiser, and more focused. He understood now that rejection is not a wall. It's a doorway. And every no is just clearing the path to a better yes. So he kept walking with more courage, with more clarity, and most of all, with more belief. Not just in the journey, but in himself. Ethan had reached a place where things started to make sense. Not everything was perfect. Not every day was easy, but he could feel a steady strength growing inside him. It wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy, it was calm, quiet confidence built day by day. He had learned how to show up for himself, even when no one was watching, and that made all the difference. But something else began to change. As Ethan continued to grow, people around him started to notice. Friends began to ask, "What happened to you? You seem different." Some said it with curiosity. Others said it with admiration. A few even said it with confusion, because change can make people uncomfortable. But Ethan didn't change to impress anyone. He changed because he finally realized that his life was his responsibility. He could no longer afford to live based on other people's expectations, so he smiled at the questions and he kept going. He wasn't trying to prove anything, he was just trying to live honestly. And when you live honestly, you become a mirror. Others start to see what's possible for them too. One day, his younger cousin Liam came to visit. Liam was struggling. He felt lost, unmotivated, unsure of his future. He looked at Ethan and said, "How do you do it? How do you keep going?" Ethan didn't give a long speech. He simply said, "I stopped waiting to feel ready. I just take one step every day." Liam nodded, and that short moment planted a seed. And that's when Ethan realized his growth wasn't just for him anymore. It was also for the people around him. Because when you rise, you give others permission to rise too. Your light helps others see their own path. Ethan started sharing more, not preaching, not pretending to be perfect, just being real, telling his story, sharing his struggles, celebrating his small wins, and others began to follow, not because he had all the answers, but because he showed them what was possible when you simply refused to quit. That's when Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: purpose. Not the kind of purpose that comes from money or status, but the kind that comes from knowing that your life, your choices, your actions can help someone else. He started mentoring a few students. He wrote short notes of encouragement and left them in public places. He began recording voice messages of hope, just like the one you're listening to right now, because he knew the power of words. He knew how much one kind voice could matter when someone is at their lowest. And most of all, he knew that when you grow, the world grows with you. Ethan had become a quiet warrior, not perfect, not without fear, but grounded, kind, and strong. The kind of strength that inspires, the kind that lasts. And it all began with one decision: to stop waiting, to start showing up, to keep going, even when no one believed in him, because now he believed in himself. And that was enough to change everything. Ethan stood at the edge of a quiet hill, the wind gently brushing past his face. The sun was setting, painting the sky with warm gold and orange light. He wasn't there to celebrate a grand success. He wasn't there because of an award or applause. He was there to reflect, to remember, to breathe. So much had changed in his life, not in one moment, but through 1,000 quiet ones. He thought about the version of himself from years ago, the boy who was afraid, unsure, and tired of starting over. That boy had once believed he wasn't good enough, that he didn't matter, that life was happening to him, not for him. But he had kept going, even on the days when he felt invisible, even on the nights when the silence felt heavy. Ethan had kept moving, one small decision at a time. He had learned to silence the inner critic by listening to a deeper voice, the one that whispered, "You can, you are, you will." And now, standing on that hill, he knew something he hadn't known before. The real power in life isn't found in what you achieve, it's found in what you overcome. It's in how you carry yourself through the fire, how you rise when no one is watching, and how you choose to love your journey, even when it's not perfect. Ethan had finally found peace, not because life got easier, but because he got stronger. He looked at the horizon and smiled, not because he had reached the finish line, but because he had fallen in love with the process. He no longer feared failure. He no longer needed to rush. He knew that everything he needed was already within him. And in that moment, Ethan made one more decision. He decided to live the rest of his life as a reminder that it's never too late, a reminder that small steps matter, a reminder that anyone, no matter how broken or lost, can rise again. He didn't want to be a hero. He just wanted to be a light, a spark, a reason for someone else to believe again. So he kept walking, not because he had to, but because he chose to. And every time he took a step, he thought of the people who needed to hear what he had learned. The people in quiet rooms, holding their breath, wondering if they still had time. He wanted to tell them, yes, you do. He wanted to say, don't give up now. You're closer than you think. Because if he could change, so could they. If he could rise, so could anyone. And that was the final truth Ethan had come to understand. Your story matters. Your pain has purpose, and your life, no matter how it started, can become a light for others. So, wherever you are right now, listen to Ethan's story. Remember this: you're not behind, you're not too late, and every step forward, no matter how small, is proof that you're still in the fight. Just like Ethan, just like every soul who refused to quit.